So this is going to be a two-part video series, and it has to do with using USD and MaterialX together, exporting out Lookdev assets from one program to another. And so in this first video, we're going to talk about exporting out textures from Substance Painter and then reading those in as MaterialX Material Shader Node Networks in Maya. And then in the second video, we're going to take those MaterialX files in Maya, export them out as part of a USD asset, and then bring that into Houdini. But first things first, we'll talk about just getting from Substance Painter to Maya and MaterialX. So there's a number of kind of helper tools that I have to streamline that process in Substance Painter, and one of them is my Ubershader. And the Ubershader, if we just bring it over into, let's just drag it onto this guy here. And so the Ubershader is sort of like, it's a smart material, but it's intended to be a starter template so that you can build any material that you want to into it. And it divides it up into different sections. It divides it up into the color section, the specular roughness section, the bump section, and then the no-op section. That's just to emulate slider controls that you're not going to export out as a map, but allows you to kind of visualize stuff nicely. I have whole other videos on the details of this whole thing and how you can use it. The thing that I wanted to really draw attention to here is the specular and what it's doing, which allows us to output the texture maps as we're going to want to have them. So we have in here in the specular roughness section, there's two roughness channels, and we can enable that, and then we've got a mask, and I can go into the mask and I'll just pick the paint layer, and here let me visualize it. So I'll hit Alt so we can see it, and I just paint some stuff onto here, right? And if I go back into here, you can see, I hope, let me make that maybe a little more obvious. What I have is this mask, and this mask is modulating these two values. So I have this one roughness value here, which is set to 0.2. Let me make it like extra shiny. And then I have this other value here, and let me make that second roughness value really high. And now you can see where I've painted, I get a lot of roughness in that area, and in the other place it's really shiny. And so the idea would be that you paint something, a little better than like a scribbly line, and it lets you get modulation on the shader. So if we look at this one that I've painted before, so let me turn that off and turn this one on and go into this here and look at what I've painted here. So I've just painted some kind of dirt-ish stuff onto here just to break up the specular. And then let me come into here, and I'm gonna just set that to gray so you can see that more clearly. And you can see it's like really breaking up the specular really nicely across the whole surface. And yet it's not baked into here. I have separate control in these two sliders here. I've got one roughness slider and another roughness slider, and I'm exporting that out into the map, but I'm not exporting out these exact values, which you then would just plug directly into the roughness, and meaning that you would in Maya no longer have any control and you can't tweak them. Rather, I'm exporting out the mask, and that is set up here. If we look at the roughness, you can see that we have the roughness value here, but what we actually export out is the mask for the roughness, which is a user 0 channel, and that's set to 1. And we have, for this guy, we have another user 0 channel or user channel set to mask roughness, and that's set to black. So it's exporting out into the come in here under Export Textures, and we go to this particular template that I have, DF MaterialX. That is exporting out. Let me drag this over so we get a little more room here to see what's going on. So we've got the diffuse channel, that's just regular RGB color, base color. Then we've got here the metalness, that is again just exporting out the metalness. And we've got normal. That's worth mentioning what that is for. So in MaterialX kind of has a hard time with height maps or bump. However, it does really well with normal maps. So that's what we're exporting out, is normal maps. But the thing that I want to show you here is the specular. And this is set here to that user channel, which gives you a grayscale map, which exports out just the black and white mask, which is used to drive those two values in Substance Painter, and we're going to hook it up in Maya to do the same thing, so that rather than losing all control over your specular roughness because you have a map taking up the slot for the slider, you instead have two sliders. Also worth noting is that I have in here texture set as a variable. And that is important for the naming of that. That's going to lead to me getting names like this here. So I have blinker. Blinker is the name of the texture set. And texture set in Substance Painter refers to the name of the material that you have in Maya. So when you save out an FBX from Maya, whatever you named the material that's assigned to it, it will take whatever those materials are and then divide them up over here into the texture sets, which correspond one-to-one with, if you named your material car body, then it comes into here as a texture set. So they're kind of the same thing, basically. And we need to have that in the file name for the thing that I'm about to show you in Maya. So it's going to look and it's going to say, it's going to identify the material in the file name and then say, oh, okay, I need to assign this to this material that I find in the Maya scene. And then you have the name of the color map that it's writing out, and I think I need to switch this so it's writing it out correctly. So I'm using this MaterialX template, so I come into the settings here and I would need to choose that template in here. So here it is. And then I come to my list of exports and it's going to be called blinker underscore diff underscore whatever the name of your file is. So in this case, I called it Beetle for MaterialX. You can call it whatever you want, obviously. But it needs to have these two things. It needs to know the name of the material, i.e. the texture set, and it needs to know the type of channel output that it is. So a diffuse map, a metalness map, normal map, specular map. The program actually also understands if you call it, instead of nor, you call it normal, it'll understand that. If you call it base color instead of diff, it'll understand that. So it's pretty smart about recognizing different ways of naming these channels, but it is most crucial that it has some name for both the channel that's going into and the material or texture set. Cool. So with that, let's next jump into Maya, and I'll show you how you can create the MaterialX materials and networks. All right, I'm over here in Maya, and as I was saying before, this is essentially the file that I exported out as an FBX, and I'm ready to bring the textures that I just exported out back into here. And so for that, we have this Substance Painter to Maya bridge tool. And I have other videos where I go into this in some detail that you can check out, but I just want to show you just the particular use for that is new, which is for MaterialX. And notice it's called MaterialX for Maya 2025. So this only works in Maya 2025 and up, and frankly I would use at the moment the current version is Maya 2025 update 3, and I would highly recommend using that at least. And who knows, maybe by the time you get to this video it'll be on Maya 2026, and of course that's fine too. Okay, so let's talk about how this works. So first of all, I need to go into here and go into the textures folder that it's going to be getting this stuff from. So this is my textures folder. So I just select that. Here I need to put one of the names of the texture sets or shader names or material names. So I'll just put in surf, and I need to put in one of the names of the map types. And then with that stuff there, I just click launch. It shows you what it found. So it's finding, maps that are called diff, and it's going to put that into the base color, and it's telling you all the stuff it's going to do. And I'm going to hit proceed. All right, so you can see that it has applied all the stuff. We got some feedback in the script editor, and what it's saying is normal map found flat texture map skipping for the blinker normal. And if we go, this is the blinker, and if I go into here and say show in Lookdev X, then you can see that there's no output from the normal going into the normal channel. And if we go into here too, there is no normal map. And so that's a feature that what it will do is it will look through the textures and it will see if the textures are flat. And by that means that the textures just have one color or value. Like, so the normal map is just sort of solid blue, meaning there's no information on it, and which doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. It's kind of confusing, honestly, to connect something that doesn't have any information on it. So for a normal map, it doesn't connect anything. Same is true for when there's a specular roughness mask and it's just all black or all white, then it'll just not connect that. So you're not confused of thinking like, why is this not working? Why am I not getting the two values? Because there aren't two values, and so it doesn't connect them. So that's a nice feature of that. For where it does find the maps, it connects them all. So let's take a look at that and the structure of that. So here is the car body, and I'm just going to right click on this and say show in Lookdev X, and just use the same tab as before. And so here is the setup for it. It's doing a MaterialX standard surface shader, which is the exact parallel to the Arnold standard surface shader, but just universalized for MaterialX. It has a this is a surface shader, this is a material, so this is the same thing as an SG in Maya shader group. And you have a connection here to the surface shader, and we'll get into later like displacement shaders. You can make a displacement shader onto here, but that wouldn't come in automatically. It's something you'd have to set up in addition as like a next step. So this is kind of gets you there for the majority of use cases, gets you as at least a really good starting place, which is to have a base color map. So this map here is going to the base color, and the same map is going into the subsurface color. And then we've got the normal map, which is, let me collapse these up to make it a little more readable. We've got the normal map, which is going into the coat normal, and also going into the geometry normal. And then we have the roughness, which is going into the specular roughness. And all of this is in a node graph. So we jump into here, into this node graph, and that's where we have kind of all of the the network nodes all collected into this this little area, and then as we come out, we've got the terminal for all the connections to come out of the node graph and then into the shader. And that is kind of a standard way to work with MaterialX shaders, both in MaterialX and in USD. And so that's important. And if we take a look at what we've got going on in here, we've got the metalness, and that is set up with the node type set to float. And so that's the thing that's kind of unique to MaterialX, is that as opposed to like my maps or texture file nodes, is that you've got this node type and there's different choices for it, and it's really important that you're outputting the right output in the channels. And so metalness needs to be a float, whereas for normal maps we actually have two things. We have, first of all, this here, which is exporting out as a vector 3 and then going into a normal map node, and then that's being output, and the output from that is going out into our terminal. And then we've got the diffuse color, that's a color 3 output and going into the out color terminal. And then over here we've got the specular, and that's going into what I'm calling a roughness lerp. Lerp is sort of shorthand for linear interpolation. And you see here that I've got the mix, which is my map here, the roughness mask, which has black or white values, and that is modulating these foreground and background values. So what you'd need to do is this is one of two sliders for the roughness now. So you just come into here and you'd modulate those values for the roughness and get the same behavior that we just saw in Substance Painter, where you have two values for the roughness instead of one. So that's really nice to just have that control, and that's the setup for that. To look at it in a different way, we got in the, let's go to, here is the shader, or the MaterialX document, and then it contains all these nodes. We have the car body nodes, which is the node graph, and then in here we've got the different nodes. And so you could, let's actually show it on the car metal. I think that might be nicer. And to do that, well, actually it brings me to, look how nicely this is displaying, right? So it's giving you, I can see the specular differences on here. I can see the normal maps on here, and it looks, and it's displaying this like really fast. So this is also a thing about one of the new things, the special things about USD, about Hydra and Storm, is it allows you to have really nice stuff in the viewport, which is yeah, it's one of the motivations for why USD is so cool, is being able to see this stuff displayed not just in the render but like live in your viewport, and have it be really fast to work with. And I can add like a dome light and a directional light into here, and let me see, let me make my directional light a little bit bigger so I can see what it looks like, and turn it around like that. And then I'll hit 6 and 7, and that's going to display it with lights on. There we go. And now I got this looking pretty in the viewport, and I can show you what I wanted to show you earlier. So I'm going to open up this here and open up the lerp, and I can even here in the attribute editor just move these things around and change the way that my specular roughness is working. And of course, you can also do that in a render. Okay, and then you can just play around with, let me just grab this little region so it's a little faster. Play around with the values. Until you get something that you like. So the idea here is that you are doing Lookdev in Maya directly on MaterialX, and then we can take that and output that Lookdev asset in MaterialX and USD, and then we can read that into Houdini or Unreal. That'll be our next stop. But before you go in there, you're going to want to edit all these materials. You can see I haven't edited the blinkers yet. It looks like we need to do some editing on the car tires and figure out what's going on with that. So I'll just do that real quick, and then we will go from there and output this as a USD file with those MaterialX references. And I don't really want to do this on here. I kind of like it actually the way it is, but just to show you a possibility that you can do on here is, let me first of all pull this into LookDevX. And then I'm going to go to the diffuse. I'm going to make a color correct. It's important when you do this that everything you're doing is like pure MaterialX stuff. So don't pick anything from the Arnold menu, because that's going to be Arnold specific. You want to pick it from the standard library. So I have here color correct from Arnold, but what I want is color correct adjustment from the standard library. You can also just find them in here, but it's a lot easier just to kind of know what you're looking for and then tab it in here. But you can browse through here, and there's just tons of things in here. So I'm going to pick this color correct adjustment, and I'm going to pipe this into here, and then take this out and put it into the out color. And come on, why is it not doing that? Okay, there we go. And then I could come into here and I could say I want to maybe desaturate the surfboard, or let's say I want to put like some kind of tint onto it. So, oh gosh, they don't have color sliders in here for the gain or the gamma, which would be one way to do a tint. I guess I could do it in the hue by just shifting the hue around. That's a little awkward because I don't really want to do a hue shift. So let's try something else. Multiply. Yeah, so that gives me a multiply. That could work. Let's do that. Let's do both. So I'll take my color correct, and I'll take my multiply, and I'll pipe this into here. And then what is my channel? I've got color 3 to BSDF. Okay, I don't think I want that. See, BSDF is going to mean it's going to output a shader, and I don't want that. I want my output to just be color. So let me see if I can find something else. Let's try multiply math. See if that gives us what we want. Yeah. Okay, so that's just going to give us a straight color 3 output. So I'll put this into here and put this into the output color. And it's because I'm doing IPR like live, so really I should not live render as I'm trying to make these other connections. Kind of having to like, recalculate all this stuff. But now we can come into here and do a tint. So let's say I want to just to do something, let's just try making it have a bluish tint, and it'll take the yellow and make it green. And I kind of hate that, so let me just play around with what I want to do on here. Sure, why not? I'll make it orangey with a reddish tint. So yeah, that comes back to that you got to make sure that your node type is the correct one for what you're trying to output. So if we're coming over here and we're outputting color, then we're coming into a color correct. We need to also have it be set to color 3. So this is set to color 3, so is this, so is this. And yeah, you can, and I'm just kind of making a more complex network on here. And you could just, build stuff to your heart's content. Just make sure you have the right channels connected. And as just a good practice, it's a really good practice to have all of your texture maps and shader nodes all inside of this node network, so they're kind of packaged all together. And that would include, if we wanted to do, say, some kind of displacement maps, you'd also have your displacement map inside of here, and then you'd give it a new output. So tell you what, just for fun, I'll do the same thing. I'll do that here too. So I'm gonna let me stop my render so I don't crash everything accidentally. And I'm gonna come into here, and I'm gonna make a tiled image node, and I'm just going to come into here and grab something from my texture maps. So I'm going to go into the car metal and grab the spec map from that, and then I need to make a displacement node. Connect this guy. It needs to be a float, and I connect that into the displacement, and then this comes into another channel, which I guess I'll just leave as out. I could rename that. I think it's a good idea to do it for clarity, to rename it to whatever it is. So out displacement would be logical. But then you'd come over to here, and you take this and you drag this into the displacement shader, then render it. There we go. Cool. Okay, so we have some interesting kind of test case stuff set up on this, and so that concludes this. And in the next video, as I mentioned, we're going to be, well, actually, there's one more thing I want to do. I want to put emission onto this, just as another potential test case. So let me do that real quick. So let's see, that's inside of there. So I'm going to come over to here and hit F to jump into here, and then click on the bulb. And can I get to it from here? I think I can. See, assign new material. Okay, let's try this way. So it's a little, I wish there was a drop down here where you could drop-down menu and say Edit in MaterialX. Guess that's a wish list from me. But what I can do is it is connected, so I can jump over into here, and I can actually go into, I can edit it here like we've seen, but I can also come into the SG where it's connected and then click on this and say show in LookDevX. So that's another way to jump into there, and then I can come into the material, and I wanted to edit the emission, so I'll just put that on. Cool. All right, so next video we will take all of this and export it out as USD and bring that into Houdini. Thanks for watching, and I will put a link down in the description to my Substance 3D Painter to Maya bridge tool, and this is the documentation for it. There's as much detail as one could ever want in these docs, and then if you just click on this, this takes you to the GitHub page where you can download it.